For a long time, we were looking forward to everyone's favorite web-slinger joining the MCU. Now that Peter Parker has teamed up with the Avengers, there's a new hero on the block. We're going to be talking about what fans can expect from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and how different it'll be from the MCU Spider-Man that we're all used to. Peter Parker. If you ask most people who Spider-Man's alter ego is, they would most likely say Peter Parker. But as us comic book fans know, there's been many different people to take on the role of Spider-Man over the years. On the big screen alone, there's been 3 versions played by Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and the MCU's Tom Holland. We know that Peter Parker isn't the star of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but he does make an appearance. It's clear this middle-aged Peter Parker is a far cry from the MCU version. According to producer Chris Miller, this version of Peter Parker is an amalgamation of various pop culture Peter Parkers, but is primarily an older and more experienced version. When Peter explains his Spider-Man career to Miles Morales, moviegoers spotted some very familiar scenes which closely resemble Tobey Maguire in the original Spider-Man movies. For example, we see him struggling to hold back a speeding train, which occurred in Spider-Man 2, and who could forget the classic rainy day upside-down kiss shared by Peter Parker and Mary Jane. Tobey Maguire was even considered for the role of Peter Parker in Into the Spider-Verse, making the connection crystal clear. Although this movie takes place in an alternate dimension, it's quite clear where the inspiration for Peter's character comes from. Sony versus Marvel. For a long time, one of our favorite superheroes simply couldn't join the Marvel Cinematic Universe, no matter how much fans wanted him there. But fortunately, the people in charge were able to work out the rights, and Spider-Man, as portrayed by actor Tom Holland, was able to finally become a part of the MCU. He made his first appearance in Captain America: Civil War before getting his own standalone movie, Spider-Man: Homecoming, and teaming up to save the world in Avengers: Infinity War. Marvel fans know that the MCU is a complex place with a lot of moving parts and many interconnecting events, but in comparison, the Sony movie world in which Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse takes place is quite different. Some people have even taken to calling the Spider-Verse Sony's version of Marvel characters, which isn't quite as catchy, but illustrates that the universe extends beyond Spider-Man. While the MCU is a tightly oiled machine overseen by Marvel Studios' Kevin Feige, the Sony movies are controlled by their producers. They've expressed a desire to cross over with the MCU from time to time, but most of their movies will be standalone films, at least at first. They need to prove they can do superhero movies justice before they sink too much into creating an entire universe. Miles Morales. We've seen many different versions of Peter Parker on the big screen, from a wide-eyed Avengers hopeful to a much more jaded hero, but in many ways, Peter Parker has stayed the same over the years, and that's understandable. However, not only are we getting to explore an all-new timeline in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but we're meeting an entirely new character, instead of just a different iteration of Peter Parker. Miles Morales is a totally different type of Spider-Man, and frankly, we couldn't be happier about it. Jason Reynolds wrote the novel Miles Morales Spider-Man, and he said when he was first approached about writing a Spider-Man book, he wasn't interested. He felt it was a topic which had been done extensively, and he didn't want to tell the same story with the same character over and over again. But when he learned the novel would feature Miles Morales, suddenly Reynolds was on board. When asked why he took on the project, Reynolds replied, "I think that kids who look like me and live in neighborhoods like I grew up in deserve to know they can also be super. Miles has an entirely different personality and background than Peter Parker, and we think it's one many kids will be able to relate to." Spider suits. Now that we've talked about the characters wearing them, let's get into the Spider-Man suits themselves. There have been tons of different suits over the years, and even in the brief time Spider-Man has been in the MCU, he's managed to change them a number of times. Of course, we have the basic Spider-Man outfit, which looks like a pair of sweats and doesn't feature any special powers. During Spider-Man Homecoming, we saw Tony Stark gift Peter Parker an extremely upgraded suit with all sorts of awesome new powers and abilities. After Peter finally proved he could be a hero without the suit, Tony even created an upgraded version for him, which came in handy during the events of Avengers: Infinity War. In Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, we see that Peter Parker's suit collection has grown exponentially over the years, and he has far more outfits than he does in the MCU. Of course, there's his classic costume, followed by some specialty suits designed to take down certain enemies. These include the Electro-proof suit and the Dusk outfit. Then we have some suits which allow him to move quietly, including the big-time stealth suit and the secret favorite war suit. We even get to see the advanced costume from the Spider-Man video game for PlayStation 4, and those are just a few of the many suits we spotted. Expectations. At CBR, you'd be hard-pressed to find a bigger group of Spider-Man fans. But that doesn't mean we automatically love everything featuring our favorite web-slinger, and no, we're not talking about the amazing Spider-Man TV series from the 70s. When Spider-Man first came to the big screen, fans weren't sure what to think, but Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi and starring Tobey Maguire, was a huge hit. By the time it was Tom Holland's turn to wear the Spider-Man costume, expectations were sky high. Marvel Studios has become an absolute behemoth in the world of superhero movies, while Sony has always garnered more skepticism. After all, how many of you were doubtful about a PG-13 Venom movie that doesn't have Spider-Man in it? When we first heard that Sony was making an animated Spider-Man movie, expectations were at an all-time low. There were so many great upcoming Marvel movies, such as Black Panther and Avengers Infinity War, that the upcoming Sony movie wasn't even on the radar of most people. Co-director Peter Ramsey says he and his team were well aware that the hype level for this movie was low, and it motivated them to work harder and create an amazing movie. They knew they would have to come up with something truly amazing and groundbreaking to impress audiences, so that's exactly what they did. Villains. Spider-Man has an impressive rogue gallery, and in fact, one of the problems that plagued Spider-Man movies in the past was there were just too many characters. In the MCU, we saw Peter Parker go head-to-head with Adrian Toomes, better known as the Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming. Then, of course, during Avengers Infinity War, he fought valiantly against the Mad Titan, Thanos, and the insidious members of his Black Order. These are excellent villains, but we're going back to comic book basics for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. After all, you can't have multiple versions of Spider-Man and not have an equally impressive number of villains for them to battle against. Many of the villains appearing in Into the Spider-Verse have to do with organized crime, something which Spider-Man frequently finds himself trying to eradicate. Of course, we have iconic mob boss Kingpin, who's a slightly complex character, not unlike the Vulture. Other Spider-Verse villains with a passion for organized crime are Scorpion and Tombstone, and of course, what would a Spider-Man movie be without Dr. Octopus and the Green Goblin? There's no doubt that Into the Spider-Verse will be a veritable who's who of Spider-Man's rogue gallery, and of course, we'll get to see the Prowler, who's a villain specific to Miles Morales and also happens to be his uncle. Motivation. If you think about it, the MCU Tom Holland Spider-Man and the Miles Morales Spider-Verse version both have some things in common. They're both young and relatively new to the whole being a superhero thing, so now let's talk about what motivates them to get up and put their costume on every morning or after school or whenever is convenient. According to Tom Holland, the MCU version of Spider-Man has a goal in mind during Spider-Man Homecoming, and that's to join the Avengers. Specifically, he wants to prove himself to Tony Stark and earn his place on the crime-fighting team. For a character who tends to fly solo, this was a pretty interesting on-screen motivation. While this version of Peter Parker wanted nothing but more responsibility, Miles Morales is pretty much the opposite. Unlike the overachieving Peter, Miles is a very unmotivated kid. He's smart, but that doesn't mean he wants to save the world or even show up for class. Unfortunately, he ends up with all of these superpowers, and you know what they say about great powers and great responsibility. Peter Parker couldn't wait to show off his powers and become Spider-Man, but for Miles Morales, his motivation takes some time and no small amount of reluctance. They may both be young kids who got bitten by spiders, but their attitudes towards their situations could not be more different. Team. We've talked about how desperate the MCU Peter Parker was to join the Avengers, and during Avengers Infinity War, he got to fight side by side with his favorite heroes. Let's not talk about how that ended. We're going to focus on the positives here. On his side, Peter has his best friend Ned, who may not have superpowers, but he's always there when Peter needs him. Then of course there's Tony Stark, who created his super suits and serves as an important mentor role for this aspiring young superhero. Although we saw him turn down the Avengers at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, things have changed out of necessity by the time Avengers Infinity War rolls around. Things have certainly changed in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and we see that Peter Parker's now the mentor in this universe. He helps a young Miles Morales cope with his powers and decide against wearing a cape, which, as we all know, is of the utmost importance. Then we have Spider-Woman from an alternate reality where Gwen Stacy was the one bitten by a radioactive spider. Spider-Man Noir is still Peter Parker under that mask, but it's a version of him from the 30s. Then we also have fan favorite Spider-Ham, from a world where all heroes are anthropomorphized animals, and Penny Parker, the schoolgirl character who pilots a mech. Timeline. For a long time, the MCU tended to avoid time travel being a major plot point, and with good reason. It already gets enough flack for its characters constantly dying and then coming back to life, so does it really need to be able to rewind time? Well, the movie Doctor Strange shook this up in a big way when the titular character got his hands on the Eye of Agamotto, a device which holds the Time Stone. Using this power, we saw Doctor Strange constantly rewrite time in order to defeat the evil Caecilius and Dormammu. He used it again during Avengers Infinity War to zip into some other timelines and see how Thanos could possibly be defeated. This was the first time we really saw other timelines being talked about, and so far they haven't really been explored in the MCU. But in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, alternate timelines are the name of the game. Marvel fans know there are actually millions of alternate universes which make up a singular Marvel multiverse, and each of them has their own version of Spider-Man. Some only feature slight differences from the main timeline, but others are completely different. Take Spider-Ham, for example. With the Spider-Verse, the various spider people and creatures are able to join together to fight particularly potent threats. Sure, the MCU Spider-Man can call on the Avengers, but it's not quite the same as forming an army of alternate versions of yourself. Star. We know that Peter Parker and Miles Morales are completely different characters who both just so happen to have been bitten by a radioactive spider. But in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, we're really looking forward to seeing Peter Parker take on a very different role. Sure, we've seen him stop a speeding train, swing through the streets of New York City, and kiss in the rain, but those are all superhero starter skills. In the MCU, all Peter wants is for someone to be proud of him, and he finds that person in Tony Stark. It's a sweet storyline, but so much different than the position he finds himself in when he enters the Spider-Verse. This version of Peter Parker has already been there, done that, and has some thoughts on the topic. Peter Parker may be a superhero, but he isn't the hero of this movie. If anything, he's more of a sidekick to Miles Morales, who's the primary protagonist. Even after Peter earns the respect of Tony Stark in the MCU, he's still a sort of junior superhero, and definitely isn't in the position to advise anyone on anything except pop culture. His role in the Spider-Verse is something we haven't seen before on the big screen, and we're really looking forward to getting to know an older and hopefully wiser Peter Parker. How do you think Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse stacks up to the MCU Spider-Man? Which one do you prefer? Let us know what you think in the comments below, then click on the subscribe button to get even more MCU content from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching.